Hi everyone, and welcome back to Cardiac Radio for Teens. For those of you who might not know, Cardiac Radio for Teens is a place where teens can come together with other teens to learn about Spiritist teachings and topics in a way that makes more sense to us and is more relatable to us as teenagers in today's society. And hopefully, through our radio show and through our talks, we'll be able to further understand these concepts and not just understand them, but put them into practice in our daily lives. So for the past couple weeks now, months even, we've been talking about the different laws, moral laws that we have. So we've talked about the law of destruction, the law of society is the one we're currently on, and we've been talking about a lot of moral laws of kind of the right things that we should be doing in our lives to improve and to get better and to one day reach perfection. So last week we left off, we still have the last section of the law of society to continue. So we'll read that section and then we'll go on to the next law, which is the law of progress. So let's continue with the law of society on question 773, and this section is titled Family Ties. So question 773. Why is it that among the animals, parents, and offspring no longer recognize each other when the latter no longer needs care? So the question is asking, so in animals, once the child does not need the parent anymore, they go their separate ways and they don't recognize each other anymore. So why is that the case? Why don't they recognize each other and stay as a family? Why do they split up? And the spirits answered, animals live a material life, not a moral life. A mother's tenderness for her young has as its principles the instinct of preservation regarding the beings born to her. When these beings are able to take care of themselves, her task is fulfilled, and nature requires no more of her. Thus, she abandons them in order to occupy herself with more newborns. So the thing with animals is, like we've talked about, they're living a very materialistic life, and they're not worrying about morals and doing the right thing because they don't have that evolvement to be able to worry about those things. So they're just living very instinctively, and when this mother is taking care of her children, it's like self-preservation, because these children are, let's say, they're like a part of her. So she's like, oh my god, these newborns, they're a part of me. I have to preserve them and save and help them. But once they're old enough to be on their own, it's kind of not her responsibility anymore, because they're only thinking about materialistic, I need to help myself. So once she kind of helped that offspring, then she kind of lets them go and then helps the next set of babies. So animals live this very materialistic life, and so it's not really about taking care and being with the family. It's just, I had to take care of this baby because it came from me, but now that it's ready to go on its own, it can go on its own just fine. Question 774. There are persons who infer from animals' abandonment of their offspring that the family ties among humans are merely a result of social customs and not a law of nature. What should we make of this? So what they're saying here is that, so some people think, okay, if animals, because basically humans are, we've seen, humans are very closely associated with animals, but we have, like we saw before, we have this moral aspect that they don't have. But materialistically wise, we do have a lot of animalistic characteristics. So if animals' abandonment is natural to happen, animal to abandon their babies after their babies are good enough to take care of themselves, then now they're saying, okay, so our family ties, humans being bonded together, is that just because it's a social custom because everyone does it, so we kind of stay in a family, or is that a law in the law of nature? And so then the spirits answered, human beings have a different destiny than that of many animals, so why do you always want to identify with them? For humans, there is something beyond physical needs. There is needs to progress. Social ties are necessary for progress, and family ties are summed up in social ties. Hence, family ties are a law of nature. God has thus willed that humans learn to love one another as brothers and sisters. So what they're saying here is that, yes, although we might be similar to animals in certain ways, we we're different. We're not completely the same, so we can't always just compare everything that animals do to what humans do. For humans, we know that it's past just our physical needs. Sure, maybe your physical needs don't need to be protected by your parents, but there's something that needs to progress, and that's like working together as a family and being in a society, and that society could be your family, that being in that group of people that you have to work with and deal with. And so these social ties are necessary, so family ties are necessary, because family tie is a social tie that we have to other people. So these are working in the law of nature, and God wants us to learn how to live together like brothers and sisters. So we have this example of loving your family, and some people even have troubles with that. So we have this example of loving our family, and then we have to go and learning people outside of just our intimate family. So humans go that step further beyond animals, that we're trying to evolve our moral laws as well, and not just materialistic. So we can't just compare what animals do to what humans do. Question 775. What would be the results of society if family ties were relaxed? So if we didn't have family ties, or if family ties were like relaxed, so not completely gone, but like barely there, like, okay, you're in a family, but no one really talks to each other or sees each other. And so what would happen if we didn't have these family ties? And the spirits answered, a magnification of selfishness. So what they're trying to say here is that our family ties, they kind of keep us grounded and keep us humble, and not only thinking about ourselves, but thinking about other people. Because think about it, if you don't, like self-preservation, we're trying to preserve ourselves, but with a family, you also want to protect your family, at least, if not other people as well. So if we didn't have these family ties, you would literally only be thinking about yourself. So with these family ties, you learn to think about other people and care about other people, and hopefully you can expand that past your family, but the family is a great place for that to start. So now we've reached the end of chapter 7, which was about the law of society, so talking about being in society, being in a group, and how that's beneficial to us. And now we're going to go into chapter 8, which is about the law of progress. And so we're going to talk about how we progress and why we progress. And so the first section in this is titled The State of Nature. And this starts at question 776. Are the state of nature and natural law the same thing? So here we have two terminology words. So we have the state of nature and natural law. So are those the same thing? And the spirits answered, no, the state of nature is the primitive state. Civilization is incompatible with the state of nature, whereas natural law contributes to the progress of humankind. So the state of nature is that primitive state where there's no civilization. So think about the basics, or even if we think about places that don't have humans, this basic thing, that's the state of nature. That's just being nature. But the law of nature is what we apply to our lives to help us grow and learn and progress and become better. So the progress of humankind, the natural law is what contributes to that. But the state of nature is just that primitive, without civilization nature. And then Allan Kardec puts his own comment in. He says, the state of nature represents the infancy of humankind and the departure point from their intellectual and moral development. Being perfectible and containing the seeds of their own improvement within themselves, human beings are not meant to live forever in infancy. The state of nature is transitory, and humans leave it behind through progress and civilization. Natural law, on the other hand, rules humankind as a whole, and people improve to the degree that they comprehend and practice this law in a better manner. So when we're talking about the state of nature, we're talking about this very primitive thing, and kind of where you transition from being a simple example for us would be cavemen, they didn't really understand much, to then progressing intellectually and morally instead of just having animal instincts. So we kind of transition from animal instincts to being in a society and being in a civilization. So that state of nature is just like a transitory thing that we all go through. But natural law, that's what is like that's what we're all following to help us progress and to help humankind progress as a whole. And that's kind of what rules all that. We're trying to comprehend it, and the better we comprehend it, the better we're going to be able to progress. Question 777. Since there are fewer needs in the state of nature, human beings do not suffer all the tribulations they create for themselves in a more advanced state. What is to be thought of the opinion of those who regard the state of nature as the state of perfect early happiness? So here the question is saying, okay, so those people, like for our example, let's say cavemen, but we know that cavemen in the history of like eternity, cavemen is like, it's like relatively new. Like us on Earth, like our history is very short compared to how long there's been other things. But to keep it simple, let's think about like primitive people or cavemen. So these people, they didn't suffer from that many things because they didn't have many things to like do wrong to suffer from. Like it wasn't like, oh, I didn't work hard so I lost my job, so this and this and this. They didn't really have structured jobs, so they didn't have that like suffering, or they didn't have a lot of suffering and problems because they weren't advanced and they didn't have that many things to, let's say, like mess up. So they're saying, so what do you think about saying that, oh, that primitive natural state of nature is, they say here, the state of perfect earthly happiness. So is being in that state of nature perfect happiness? And then the spirits answered, what do you expect? That sort of happiness is the ignorant happiness of the brute. There are humans who understand no other. It is being happy in the same sort of way that the animals are. Children, too, are happier than when they become adults. So what they're saying is, okay, yeah, so they're happier because they don't know anything else. Think about it. If the only thing that you know is, oh, I need to find food for myself or find shelter for myself, you find those two things, you're like, oh, good day, I'm happy. But of course, when we go progressing, there's a lot more things that we come in contact with, that we discover, that a lot more problems that we find that we have to get through. And yeah, then we're going to see a lot more different things because there's a lot more different things we're trying to overcome. But in this state of nature, when we're in this primitive state, think about it. If we just need food, shelter, if you find the two of those, oh, you're happy. And it's the same thing if we look at children. Children, they're very happy because, okay, what do they need? They need food, which is going to be provided to them, and they play. So if we have that, then they're happy. But of course, when they become adults, they face a lot more things. And it's not because it's bad. It's just because that they aren't aware yet. They haven't learned those things. They haven't evolved that much to be able to be aware of bigger struggles. So they're ignorant because they just don't know the things that are ahead. So how would they be upset about a problem that they don't even know is a problem yet? So because of that, it is this happiness, but it's an ignorant happiness. It's just because you don't know any better, so you're happy at where you're at. Question 778. Could humankind regress back to the state of nature? So where we are right now, humankind, can we go back to that state of nature, going back to that primitive time? And the spirits answered, no. Humankind must progress without cease, and it cannot return to the state of infancy. It progresses because God has willed it. Believing that it could regress back to its primitive condition would be denying the law of progress. So now's when we're getting into the law of progress. So we will never go backwards, is what they're saying. So say, okay, we came from primitives, and yes, we're not close to perfect yet. We're nowhere close to perfect as a society, but we're getting there, and we've come a long way. And so these ways that we've came, we'll never go backwards. We'll never lose that. We're going to face more problems and more challenges up ahead, but what we have learned and what we have gained, we will have that with us. So, and if we did like go backwards into back primitive times, that would be going against the law of progress, which we're going to go more into detail in. But that would be going against like, oh, you're progressing and you're working toward this bigger goal. Why would you turn around and go back to how it used to be? So that's the end of that section. And now the next section is the march of progress. So now we're going to be talking more directly about this law of progress. Question 779. Do humans draw from within themselves the power to progress, or is progress nothing more than the result of education? So, is progress something that we have kind of like within us? Like within us we have this will to progress, to become better, or is it just people telling you, oh, you have to get better, oh, you have to do more things? Is it just your education, or do we have that within us? And the spirits answered, they advance naturally by themselves. Not all progress at the same time or in the same manner. However, and it is through social contact that the most advanced help the others to progress. So what they're saying here is that as humans, we progress naturally, we advance naturally by ourselves. So we have this within us, and then we kind of progress and use it little by little, and naturally on our own, we're going to evolve and we're going to get better and improve. And of course, not all is at the same time, not at the same manner. Some people get more advanced than others, just like if we see in school. Some people get higher grades and are better at one topic than the other, or some people are better than art than science, or some people are better than social studies than science, better at science than math. So there's a lot of different things, and so we don't all progress at the same time. We learn at different rates, and we acquire things at different rates and manners, but we are progressing in our own way and through ourselves. And of course it said, however, it is through social contact that we advance the most. So yes, it is within ourselves, but it's through being in contact with others, and this is where it goes back to that law of society of having to be with others. Being with others helps us to advance the most. Because think about it, it's easy to do the good thing when you're just by yourself. It's easy to just be nice to yourself. But now when you have to work with other people and do things with other people involved, and with other opinions involved, and of other people of different evolutions involved, then it becomes a lot more complicated. So this social contact helps us advance more quickly. So it is good to have people around, but it does come from within ourselves. Question 780. Does moral progress always follow intellectual progress? So, does moral progress, so like evolving your morals and good qualities about yourself, does that always follow intellectual progress? So like first you get like knowledge of, oh, this is this and this and this, like kind of, let's say, scientific knowledge. So you learn this intellectual scientific knowledge, and then do your your morals progress? And the spirits answered, it is its consequence, but does not always follow it immediately. So yes, it is its consequence. As we go learning more things, more like facts, we'll be able to develop our morals further, because it's like, oh, as we learn more facts about, let's say, about killing other people. We used to, in the olden days, it was fine to kill a lot of people all the time. As we go learning more facts about killing people, or maybe why people die or something, then with that, we're going to develop our morals as well on top of that. So, but it doesn't follow immediately. So sometimes it'll be like, oh, I just learned this thing, let me put it into practice in this moral, or let me not be selfish and help other people, or something like that. But sometimes it's not immediate. Sometimes it takes a while for you to develop that moral progress from that intellectual progress. And then there's a second part to this question, and it says, how can intellectual progress lead to moral progress? So I was saying, so like, how could this happen? And the spirits answered, by making good and evil understandable, for then humans can choose between the two. The development of free will follows the development of intelligence and increases the responsibility of humans for their acts. So, like we said before, it's between knowing good or bad, or knowing right or wrong. So let's say, okay, we're just killing people because we don't really think about it, and we don't think about it at all. And then we start learning a little bit more, and then we're like, oh, this is the right thing to do and this is the wrong thing to do. Now that we know those two things, now is when you progress your morals, because now it's not about, oh, I just doing this is a fact, that's it. Now it's like, oh, I have to think, oh, is this the right thing or the wrong thing to do? And now we're going into developing our morals. And of course this comes from our free will, and that's why it doesn't follow immediately, because just because maybe society decided something is good or bad doesn't mean that person necessarily agrees, because you have your free will to say, oh, okay, yes, this is right, or not. So you have this free will to choose right or wrong and to learn, and then as you go learning, then you'll use this free will and work on your moral progress as well. And of course, the more intelligence we get, the more responsible we are, because now we know. Like, it's saying, okay, like when a little kid does something wrong, oh, well, they didn't know that was right or wrong. It was the first time they've ever done that. They didn't know that was a bad thing to do. Now they know. So now that you know, now that you have more responsibility to not do it again. Because now if you do it again, then it's like, oh, but you knew this was wrong and you did it. So the more we learn, the more responsibility we also get in ourselves, which is what we see with children growing into adults. And then there's a third part to this question, and it says, then how can one explain that the most enlightened cultures are often the most perverted? So how can we explain that some enlightened cultures that are very, let's say like morally evolved, they might not be so intellectually evolved? And the spirits answered, complete progress is the goal, but like individuals, cultures only reach it step by step. Until they have developed their moral sense, they may use their intelligence to do evil. Morality and intelligence are two forces that only achieve balance over time. So yes, people may be very intelligent, but then they just are doing something slightly wrong with it, or they're doing something completely wrong, they're doing evil with it. So you can be intelligent, and even not just a person, it could be a whole culture. This culture could be very intellectually advanced, but their morals are not there yet. And it takes time. It takes time for both of those to balance out, and to have both of those in good harmony, to have moral and intellectual balance. And even remember, if we think back, way back to when we were talking about the spirit hierarchy of like the different level of evolved spirits, there were some spirits that were more intellectually evolved than morally evolved, and then others who were more morally evolved than intellectually evolved. So we do have those different types, and people are different rates, and also cultures and societies are at these different rates. Because it doesn't just balance out quickly. It takes time to have moral and intellectual balance. Question 781. Is humankind ever permitted to halt the march of progress? So, can we ever just stop progressing? Like, can humankind ever just be like, okay, let's take a break from progressing and just stay where we are right now? And the spirits answered, no, but it can sometimes slow it down. So, okay, so we can't completely stop it. We can't just stop, okay, freeze, no one's going to progress any further. No, we can't do that, but we can slow it down a lot. If people are being very difficult, society is very difficult to adapt to changes, if, like, let's say, like, not a lot of laws are changing, we can slow the progress down, but we're never going to completely stop it. There's always going to be some progress involved. And then there's a second part to this question, and it says, what are we to think of those who attempt to halt the march of progress and cause humankind to regress? So we're saying, so what do you think about these people who, it seems like they came here just to, like, stop human progression. They're just going to stop all the progress we have and even push us backwards, even try and regress us back into a worse time. So what do we think about these people who attempt to do this? And the spirits answered, they are poor conceited beings whom God will chasm, and they will be swept away by the torrent they meant to stop. So these people, these spirits, they're just not thinking about others. They're only thinking about themselves and maybe thinking about a temporary goal, but eventually they will learn, and like through God and through themselves, they will learn and they will repay for this thing that they did, but they're also going to be learning that, okay, we can't push people back just because it might be helpful to me at this time. And then Allan Kardec puts his own comment in, and he says, since progress is a condition of human nature, no one has the power to oppose it. It is a living force that flawed human law, and may hinder but not stifle. When these laws become incompatible with progress, it overthrows them along with the persons who attempted to uphold them. This will continue to be the case until humans harmonize their laws with the divine justice. Divine justice desires the good for all, unlike those laws that are made for the stronger at the expense of the weak. So what they're saying here is that this is gonna happen, and this is happening now because our human laws are not at the same level of our natural laws. So the laws that we make aren't at this level of as human laws. So these people who are coming up with these laws and ideas, and even the people supporting it, let's not just put, oh, this one person did that law, so they want this for our society, but these laws that aren't quite to the point of the natural laws, those are kind of like hindering us. But eventually, we will get past that and we will evolve past that. Think about, we used to not have women's rights, and lots of countries still don't have women's rights. But now our women's rights are so much greater. Women can do the same thing as men. So, and of course, it's not perfect yet. So we still have that little place where we are trying to improve and trying to progress on, but we've gotten a lot better. So we will, while before there was time, there was people who would try to stop women from getting jobs or stop women from doing things, and there still are people who want to kind of push us back and push women being involved. They kind of want to push that away and push us back into a time when women couldn't be involved in anything practically. But those people, we will get past those people because we have progressed that part, and once we've progressed that part, we own it. So we're not going to go backwards, and eventually that person's going to have to change their ways or something, and we will continue to progress. It might just be a little obstacle, a little hurdle that we have to jump over, but we will get through that because we'll never be pushed back to something that we've already progressed from. And if it does seem that we're being pushed back and that we already went through these things, then that means that we didn't fully progress from it, and that we're like in trial 2. We're trying to do it again. So it's trying to tackle it again and do it one more time, or again and again and again until we get it. We actually get it right and we actually progress. So maybe if things are repeating, we just haven't actually perfected it yet. So that's where we'll leave off today. But before we leave off, I'd like to read our message for today's date, May 8th, from the Daily Book of Positive Quotations. This one's titled, Simple Delights. Teach us delights in simple things. We don't need money or fancy toys to have a good time. The world is full of things that can delight us. The sound of a spring robin, the scent of flowers, the smile on a child's face. I will count the things that delight me today, and I bet I find the most of them are simple things. If at all you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, anything at all you want to talk about, feel free to email me at cardiacradioforteens@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you right away. I'm Bia, and this has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening. This has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.